My name is Shawn Butler. You're in the right place. This is the GMAT Focus Edition overview for the BYU MBA program. And if you have questions about the GMAT, this is the place to be. At the end of this time together, Kailin's going to open it up for questions and allow you to ask and look for tips, hacks, whatever you can get out of her while we've got her here on the call, right? All right. That's what I wanted to share before we got started. And now I'm going to pin Kailin as host, and she can take over, and she's going to talk us through what we're looking forward to with the new recently released GMAT Focus Edition.
Awesome. Shawn, thanks so much. Hey, everyone. This is a phenomenal turnout for Tuesday at noon. So thank you so much, wherever you're joining us from. I saw, I think Joko, did I see Nigeria? Was that, or trying to think of where I saw, yeah. So I'm so excited to be here with you all today. I appreciate the invitation from Shawn and Casey to join. My name is Kailin Burns. I work on behalf of GMAC, the creators and stewards of the GMAT. And so the focus of today's session, obviously, is the GMAT Focus Edition. We're going to walk through some slides. We should have time then where I can walk you through a couple of sample questions. But as we're going through the session today, please feel free to drop your thoughts, comments, questions into the chat box, and then we'll take care of addressing those when we complete the session. So without further ado, give me one moment. Okay, so as Shawn said, we're here today to help you understand and prepare for the GMAT Focus Edition. The GMAT Focus Edition was launched globally on November the 7th. If you've been going through this process, you may also be familiar with the GMAT. For all intents and purposes, we'll refer to that as the GMAT Classic. And the GMAT Classic is still available to register for, and you can take that through January 31st, 2024. After that time, then it will just be the GMAT Focus Edition, which will be in market. So to give you a little bit of background, the Graduate Management Admission Council is a global mission-driven organization. We're also a global organization of leading graduate business schools. We are, of course, the owner and administrator of the GMAT exam, but our other premier assessments include the Executive Assessment and NMAT by GMAT. What I want us to talk about, though, today is, of course, is the GMAT Focus Edition. And before we get started, of course, I want us to kind of take a step back. Some of you may be just thinking about pursuing a degree. Others of you may be getting ready to submit an application. Some of you may be in your prep process. But what I want us to focus on today is the fact that the GMAT is just one part of a whole. So you can see here, I like to call this the application pie, that the business school application is made up of many factors. So you can see here that Shawn and his team and the other institutions that you may be considering will be looking at your leadership skills. They'll be looking at your job skills and background. What's your motivation for applying to business school, but also what is your motivation for post-graduation? Those extracurricular activities, those things that make you, what are you doing? How will that add dimension to the cohort? And then they're also going to be looking at your academic aptitude, right? So that undergraduate GPA and, of course, that GMAT score. A strong GMAT Focus Edition score can help you stand out in the admission process. It can also help compensate for areas of your application that may not be as strong as you'd like them to be. So for example, maybe your undergraduate GPA isn't as strong as you would have liked it to be, or perhaps you don't have as many years of work experience as the program that's requiring of you, but a strong GMAT could help compensate in those areas. But also keep in mind that there are other ways that the schools that you're applying to will seek to learn about you and look at those intangibles, such as your soft skills, such as your essays, letters of recommendation, and even interviews. So keep that in mind as you're building your application, that you have all those pieces tied together and that they represent the best version of you. And so with that, I'd like to introduce you to the GMAT Focus Edition. This was created to help you accelerate your future. This exam is more efficient, more flexible, and provides greater insights to help you best fulfill your career ambition. So the GMAT Focus Edition is, we still wanted to make sure that we were providing a highly relevant and differentiated experience for you, the test taker. And ultimately, our goal when we were creating this assessment was to meet both the test taker of today and the future with an experience that has evolved with the world at large. To that end, we recognize that you have extremely busy personal and professional lives. So we have focused the exam content so that the exam is only 3 45-minute sections. We have also removed the analytical writing section as schools shared that they have other means of analyzing a candidate's analytical writing ability. And when they were asked to trade off for a shorter, more focused exam with longer form essays, they supported dropping the AWA essay section. The GMAT Focus Edition is thus nearly 1 hour shorter than the current version of the GMAT, and we believe the reduced content will translate into less overall prep time. A total win in my book. Another goal was to ensure that you could personalize your exam with as much flexibility as possible. So we've started by giving you the ability to review and edit questions, which we will dive into in a moment, to give you more options to optimize your test-taking strategy. We also decided to offer more section ordering choices and greater score sending control and flexibility. We also recognize the need to ensure you and schools that you're applying to were provided relevant and actionable insights. To that end, we work to maintain and strengthen GMAC's quality standards with strong predictive validity and score reliability. We now are offering more applicable content in the form of data insights to assess the most relevant skills for success in the classroom and beyond. With the expanded total score, which now includes performance on all 3 sections of the exam, you and schools will have a single data point to gain insight into problem solving, critical thinking, and data literacy skill sets. Finally, you, the candidate, will receive an improved official score report, which will offer detailed performance insights to help you assess your strengths and focus areas. I just want to take a moment for those of you that have taken the GMAT, or perhaps you're prepping for the GMAT, the current GMAT. This, of course, is the structure of the current GMAT. 4 sections, 80 questions, and you're looking at a little over 3 hours. I do want to point out here that with the current GMAT, the total score is based on your performance in quantitative reasoning and verbal reasoning. With the GMAT Focus Edition, of course, you can see that now we have streamlined it down to 3 sections with 64 questions, just over 2 hours, but paying attention to the fact that our total score is now including quantitative reasoning and data insights and verbal reasoning. A couple of other things to point out here on this slide is that you can see in quantitative reasoning, we are now focusing on problem-solving questions. And so you'll also see that within verbal reasoning, we have removed sentence correction. And you may be saying to yourself, data insights looks very similar to integrated reasoning, and you're not too far off. We have recalibrated the data insights section, and you'll also notice that we moved data sufficiency out of quantitative reasoning to the data insights section. With the GMAT Focus Edition, there are no new question types, but there is an updated calibration to focus on the 3 skill sets. And you're going to hear me say this a lot through this presentation. This assessment is focusing on problem solving, critical thinking, and data literacy. You will see that with quantitative reasoning, we have 21 questions. The problems that you will be encountering in quantitative reasoning are going to focus on algebraic and arithmetic foundational knowledge. And so we're going to be looking to see how you apply this knowledge to solve problems. Some of the problems will be contextualized in real life settings, while others will be in pure mathematical form. When you get to verbal reasoning, you, of course, are going to be tested on critical reasoning and reading comprehension skills. Within the critical reasoning questions, we're going to test your ability to analyze and evaluate complex scenarios and draw logical inferences, arguments, or solutions. Through the reading comprehension section, we're looking for you to recognize and understand ideas and be able to draw inferences from information presented in the passages. And as I mentioned, I'll have examples of both of these at the end of our presentation. And then, of course, with data insights, you are going to be tasked with to see what your skill level is for recognizing, analyzing, and synthesizing data and information shown in formats that many of you might already be using in real business situations. So within data insights, you are being asked to assess multiple sources and types of information, graphic, numeric, and verbal, and how they all relate to each other. And you're going to be asked to derive important inferences and implications to ultimately make informed decisions. With the GMAT Focus Edition, it is our hope that it will feel like a much more efficient, flexible, and insightful GMAT for you, the candidate. While I still have your attention on the screen, I just want you, if you're taking notes, I'd love for you to make a note that on the data insight section, this is the only part of the assessment where you will have access to a calculator. And it is an on-screen drop-down calculator, so very simple. I'll show you what that looks like towards the end of the session. But I want to just make you aware of that, but also keep this in mind when you're prepping. The on-screen drop-down calculator will also be available in all of our prep materials and practice exams, and it's important to only use that calculator as you're prepping, so you'll be that much more comfortable with it on test day. So with that, let's talk a little bit about how we've improved the test-taking experience. So as I mentioned, we're introducing question, review, and edit. This includes bookmarking, which will add flexibility to the exam and allows you to complete each section of the exam using the strategy that works best for you. Bookmarking allows you to note any questions you feel unsure about as you complete the exam. You can bookmark as many questions as you would like. And then at the end of each section, question review and edit allows you to review questions within the remaining section time. You can review any question, whether bookmarked or not, and you can change up to 3 answer responses per section. So let's break this down for a moment. The GMAT is a computer adaptive test, and it's also question adaptive. So you must answer each question in order to get to the next question. With the introduction of question review and edit, we are hopefully removing some of that stress that comes with when you're on a question and you're just unsure of what the answer might be. This is a great opportunity for you to be able to kind of guess and then have the flexibility to go back and double check that answer if you still have time left at the end of the section. With select section order, it's been improved to allow greater personalization to your testing experience. So initially it was just kind of a specified 3-order option, but now the 3 sections in a break can be completed in any order. And I have a slide that kind of shows it's pretty much like choose your own adventure. With your official candidate score report, we are now offering detailed performance insights. Previously, this would be at an additional cost to you, but there's no additional cost for this score report for you. But you will now be able to see performance insights by section and content type, time management, and more. And this is just a really great tool to be able to use if you are thinking that you might be testing again, but also allows you to identify your strengths and areas that you may need to focus on once you get into the classroom. And then when it comes to score sending, we are giving you added flexibility with where you send your scores and how. So you no longer have to select programs for score sending before you sit for the exam at a test center. Now, for both test center and online testing, you can use your 5 free score reports by selecting schools up to 48 hours after receiving your official score report or after you know your score. Along with this change, GMAT Focus Edition score reports that you elect to send to schools will now only contain the total score and section scores from a single exam. No other exam scores from previous exams will be sent to a school, allowing you to be fully in control of what score a program receives. I do want to kind of push on this, though, that you do need to make sure that you're keeping an eye on your emails and your MBA.com portal for when your official scores land in your portal, because that will start the clock of that 48-hour time frame for when you can send those 5 free score reports. And I don't want you to miss out on that opportunity. As I mentioned, question review and edit is brand new. It is, it's really going to help you with your strategy and identifying what works best for you when it comes to answering the questions. As I mentioned, you can bookmark as many questions as you'd like to review at the end of the exam. You do need to make sure that you're allowing time at the end of each section in order to be able to go back and review within that section. And then, of course, you can bookmark as many questions as you'd like, but you can only change up to 3 answers in each section. Just kind of, got to read the small print. If there's no time remaining in the section, you will not be able to proceed to the question review and edit screen, and you'll automatically be moved to either that optional break or to the next section. So we also talked about select section order. This was introduced back in 2018 based on candidate feedback. And so what we were hearing from candidates was that, I would feel that much more confident and would really love to be able to start with quant. Or I really, I know that I can rock verbal and I want to get that out of the way first. And so we've been able to improve this for the GMAT Focus Edition. And you can see that you can really personalize your testing experience as well as still take advantage of the 1 10-minute break that is available to you. So you'll make this decision when you are in the test on test day, and all of our official practice exams also have the opportunity to practice with select section order as well, so you can get comfortable with what's going to work best for you. You'll see here that on the side it says, option to take a total of 1 10-minute break. So we've made another change as well to the GMAT Focus Edition. We are just introducing 1 10-minute break. And this has to do with the fact that we've also reduced the overall length of the exam. And so this 1 10-minute break can be taken either after the first section or after the second section. But do keep in mind that this time is inclusive. So if you're in a test center and you decide to leave the testing room to go use the restroom, you do want to make sure that you're giving yourself enough time to check back into the test room and get back to your desk. Of course, as well as for any of our candidates that will be seeking accommodations, you're always welcome to apply for additional break time. We briefly touched upon the improved performance reports. I think we've made some really great enhancements to GMAT Focus Edition, and I really believe this is one of the greater ones. I love the fact that you are now going to get so much insight to how you performed, as well as how you can focus on improving if you desire that you want to take the GMAT Focus Edition again. So just to kind of give you a little play-by-play, we're going to give you your performance by section, as well as we're going to show you how your total score percentile ranking compares to the percentile rankings of candidates who sent their GMAT scores to the same program within the past 5 years. This is super useful to see how you stack up against other candidates who are interested in the same program. And so that is just, I think, is great. It also gives you an idea of what competition is going to look like. We're also going to give you a breakdown based on content domain and question type, looking at your performance within fundamental skills, time management, which is huge, especially if you're going to be testing again. We'll be able to break it down on where you spent more time, where you didn't spend enough time. Just a great way to help you improve your overall strategy. And then if you take advantage of question review and edit, we'll also provide a summary of which questions you reviewed and edited and those changes that were made. Along with these improved score reports, of course, we are also giving you, the candidate, more control and flexibility when it comes to who you're going to send your score to. So when we introduced the GMAT exam online, we also introduced improved score sending. And so seeing success with that over the last 3 years, we are extending those improvements and benefits to the exams that are now being delivered at our test centers. So what does this mean? No longer will you be required to select the programs that you want to receive your scores before you take the exam. Now, after you receive your official scores, you will be able to select the programs that you want to send your scores to using your 5 free score reports. As a reminder, your free score reports have to be used within the 48 hours of receiving your official score. You no longer have to accept or cancel your scores. You are in full control of what scores go to which programs. And so we're also eliminating the need to, cancel or reinstate your score. So you will no longer see that if you've heard that in the past. If you don't want to share your scores, don't send them. You don't need to take any action. They'll just sit in your account for the next 4 years and 11 months, because as GMAT scores are valid for 5 years. And of course, if you are considering more than 5 programs, you are always welcome and able to purchase additional score reports if you'd like to be able to do so. We want to make sure that the GMAT exam is broadly accessible, and accommodations are available for GMAT test takers who meet certain eligibility criteria and can properly document the request. My advice here is that you request accommodations first, and then once you receive your approved accommodations, to go ahead and register for the GMAT. You can learn more, of course, by scanning the QR code, as well as visiting mba.com. If you run into any issues with seeking accommodations, please be in touch with the school that you are applying to, and they can get in touch with me, and I'll be happy to assist where I can. But of course, I always encourage request accommodations first. Typically takes about 2 to 3 weeks once they're received to receive an update, to receive a decision, and then go ahead and register for the GMAT. And with all of these enhancements and of course shortening of the exam that we have made, we are not changing registration policies or fees for GMAT Focus Edition. We of course will continue to offer testing both online and at test centers, and you may book your appointments up to 6 months in advance. You will be allowed to attempt the GMAT up to 5 times in a rolling 12-month period and 8 attempts in a lifetime. And do keep in mind that these limits apply across channels and across test versions. As I mentioned, registration fees will remain the same and there's no change to ID requirements. However, it's always important for you to check and be aware of the ID requirements prior to registration, and you can find all those details at mba.com. So maybe you're sitting here and you're thinking, which GMAT should I take? So we've put this little table together for you to maybe help with that decision. GMAT, as we know it, of course, is available through January 31st. It's a good fit for candidates that are considering applying through round 1 and 2. It's a great fit if you're a candidate that would prefer to have more breaks, right? Because with the GMAT, you have 2 optional 8-minute breaks. This is also a good fit if you've already been preparing for the GMAT. And if you would like your total score to be reflective of your quant and verbal skills. With the GMAT Focus Edition, of course, this is also a great fit for candidates that are thinking about applying this year for round 2 and 3. You may want to pursue this if you would like a much shorter exam and you want to be able to highlight your data analysis skills. This is a great fit if you do not want to do an essay. And of course, if you want to have the flexibility of changing up to 3 responses per question. Additionally, while this hasn't been highlighted, typically it's about 7 days to receive your official scores. With the GMAT Focus Edition, we will be delivering official scores in 3 to 5 days. So it'll be a fast turnaround. So we've talked about we've talked about GMAC, we've talked about the GMAT and its play in the application process. We have also discussed, the enhancements that have been made and why, and depending upon which GMAT you may want to pursue. And so with that, I think it's really important for us to kind of get to the nitty gritty. And that is, of course, the fact that we have updated the GMAT focus score range. So of course, now the total score scale will range from 205 to 805 in increments of 10, while each of the 3 section score scales will range from 60 to 90 in increments of 1. Couple of reasons as to why we have a new score scale. We wanted to ensure that the scales on the updated version of the GMAT Focus Edition were distinct. And we also wanted to make sure that the new score scale allows you and schools to quickly distinguish the 2 versions and ensure that evaluations are appropriate and based on the correct version of the GMAT. And so with that, I do have a quick video that introduces you to, the GMAT focus scores and interpreting them versus a GMAT classic score. So give me one moment.
You have questions about the changes to GMAT scoring. We have answers. The GMAT Focus Edition's total score ranges from 205 to 805. All total scores now end in a 5, and section scores for quantitative reasoning, verbal reasoning, and data insights range from 60 to 90. Unlike the previous version of the GMAT, the total score is no longer based on just quantitative and verbal reasoning scores. It's now based on all 3 sections. Why did we change the score scale for the GMAT Focus Edition? The 5 at the end of the GMAT Focus Edition's total score helps easily distinguish between scores from a previous GMAT exam and the GMAT Focus Edition. More importantly, it's essential to know that test scores from the 2 different exam versions are not on a common scale and should not be directly compared with each other. While scores of 600 and 605 may look similar, they represent very different performance levels on different skills. If your competitiveness based on the GMAT Focus Edition needs to be compared to the previous version of the GMAT exam, it's more appropriate to compare percentile rankings rather than comparing total scores. Percentile rankings indicate the percentage of test takers that you performed better than. For example, a percentile ranking of 75% means that you performed better than 75% of test takers. In this illustrative example, a score of 640 on the previous version of the GMAT has a percentile ranking of 72% among GMAT exam test takers. In comparison, a score of 605 on the GMAT Focus Edition has a percentile ranking of 72% among GMAT Focus test takers. Therefore, if you're trying to understand your relative competitiveness, focus on percentiles. You can also visit mba.com/scores for more information. You may be wondering whether schools know about the changes to the score scale. They do. We worked closely with schools on the new score scale and on the GMAT Focus Edition itself. Schools are aware of these changes and ready to use scores from the GMAT Focus Edition. And since scores from either version of the GMAT are valid for 5 years, schools don't prefer one version of the exam over another. Remember that while your GMAT score and percentile ranking can help you stand out in the admissions process, it's only one part of the evaluation criteria that schools use to learn about you.
I hope that was helpful. In the chat, I did pop in the link so you can watch the first video that I presented this afternoon, as well as 2 videos on interpreting scores, including the last one we just showed, and then as well as a link to our official landing page website for GMAT Focus Edition. So with that, I just want to transition us now to GMAT Focus Prep. It is now available, and we are pleased to provide you with several free prep resources. We think it's so important. We know that there is a direct correlation between prepping and time spent prepping and GMAT scores. So something to keep in mind, of course, is the fact is that with the shorter GMAT Focus Edition, we believe that you can get ready for the GMAT in as little as 6 weeks. And you can do so by taking advantage of our free 6-week study planner. This will help you stick to a schedule, inform your prep activities, and track progress. Additionally, through the free starter kit, which you can grab through this QR code, you will have access to 2 free official practice exams and a free GMAT Focus official starter kit that includes 70 real GMAT questions and a guided study for step-by-step prep review. Again, these free prep tools will be available to you at mba.com. In addition to the free prep resources, there are also resources that are available for purchase, including our new official guide, which supports the updates related to GMAT Focus Edition. And of course, we also have our GMAT Focus official practice questions and additional practice exams. If you're purchasing through mba.com, you will receive an ebook with an access code to our e-learning platform. If you are someone that likes to have the book in front of you, please visit our Amazon storefront where you'll be able to purchase a physical book, but still have a code for our e-learning platform as well, so you can prep on the go. Recently, I've been receiving questions from candidates saying, oh, my cousin, my boss, my brother-in-law took the GMAT a couple of years ago. Can I use the official guides from 2021 or 2022? And the answer is yes. As I mentioned, we haven't made any changes to the question types. So using that in conjunction with the free prep resources for GMAT Focus Edition, I think will really get you up to speed and where you need to be. As I mentioned, the 6-week study planner is here. I love this this piece of collateral. We're going to help you create a pace that works for you and your lifestyle, right? You want to make sure that you have some good balance as you're preparing for the GMAT. And so, what we have done for you, if we have created this step-by-step planner that will help you stick to a schedule, provide you with a list of activities to do each week, as well as a place for you to be able to keep track of key data points that you want to use to track your progress. So if you're not sure where to start here. And do know that you can tailor this to you. So you may need to take 2 weeks to do week 1, and that's completely fine. So what if you're one of those candidates that you've already started preparing for the GMAT? What do I do? So don't stress. If you have been prepping and you feel confident with the question types in each section, I would encourage you to take a practice exam from GMAT Focus Edition and make sure that you're just comfortable with the new format and timing of the updated test. If you feel like you still need a little bit more support, of course, take advantage of the GMAT Focus official practice questions, as well as the free prep resources as well. And I think that you'll be good to go. So with that, let's talk a little bit about what you can expect on test day. The GMAT Focus Edition will be available at over 700 global test centers globally. And that, of course, is in partnership with Pearson VUE. So if you will be testing in a test center, you will want to make sure that you have the appropriate identification. We will take your picture when you get there. That will also be added to your official score report. We will require your signature, and we'll scan your palm vein. You will have access to a locker, if you're in a cold location, to put your coat. You're welcome to bring in a bottle of water, and perhaps your car keys or whatnot. I would encourage you to leave everything else at home. So leave the technology, leave the papers, the notebooks, the books, leave that all at home. During that 10-minute break, you do have access to your locker. Perhaps you're going in there to check a text message. The proctor, though, doesn't know that you're checking a text message, and it can be deemed as cheating, and they can cancel your exam on the spot. And unfortunately, I've had it happen to several candidates. So my word of advice is the paper, the books, the phones, the technology, all of that, leave that either in your car or at home and access it after your exam. For our candidates testing in a test center, you will have access to this notepad. The best way that I can describe it, of course, is that it's like a legal notepad, but the sheets are clear, and we give you a special marker. This is where you want to do all of your scratch work, where you might want to jot down thoughts about questions, where when you're in the quant section, you're doing your arithmetic. If you run out of space or run out of pages, you just raise your hand, and a test proctor will bring you a new book. For those of you that will be testing the GMAT online, while you won't have access to this notebook, you do have access to both a physical whiteboard as well as an online whiteboard. Again, this is where you would take advantage of doing your scratch work, making notes. And so for our candidates that are considering the GMAT online, if you are going to be using a physical whiteboard, please keep in mind that it has to be erasable, cannot be any larger than 12 inches by 20 inches, and you may have 2 dry erase markers and 1 eraser on your test desk. With the online whiteboard, it's built into the test platform, and you can also access it in our official prep practice exams and questions. What I've heard from candidates that are testing online is that they like to use the online whiteboard to type any notes or any thoughts that they're having, and then use the physical whiteboard on the table next to them to do all of their scratch work and all the arithmetic problems from quant as well. So I hope this is clear. If you're testing GMAT online at home or in your office, you cannot use, say, a large whiteboard behind you or pieces of paper. It has to be that whiteboard that is 12 by 20 inches. And so with that, I would love to leave you with some test day best practices. So whether you're testing in a test center or online, make sure that you're planning your logistics in advance, right? So for our test center folks, make sure that you've looked up the directions, where you're going, either where you need to get dropped off or where you're parking. If you're testing online, make sure that you have, you've cleared your workspace, you've checked the system requirements, and you've installed the secure browser. Please make a note that you can check your system requirements well in advance of your test day, and I do encourage you to do so because sometimes it can take several hours for that system check. No matter how you're testing, whether in a test center or online, I encourage you to arrive early and make sure that you have the appropriate and required identification. Once you're into the test, make sure that you're reading each question carefully and thoroughly. Before answering a question, determine exactly what is being asked, then eliminate the wrong answers, and of course, select the best choice. Make sure that you're moving through the test. If you get stuck on a question, choose the best answer and move on. Remember that you can always return to it at the end of the section via question review and edit. Make sure that you're keeping an eye on your time. So when you begin the exam, there will be a little on-screen clock display that will count down your remaining time. Make sure that you're checking this clock periodically and that you're pacing through. You want to make sure that you're completing each section. And you're not leaving any questions unanswered. And most importantly, remember to relax, right? So focus on building confidence through prep and creating a test plan. Leading up to your test day, make sure that you're getting lots of good sleep, stay hydrated, nutritious food. Make sure that you're feeding your body, but also feeding your mind. And do remember, of course, right, that this is just one piece of the application pie, right? And that you can always test again if you need to or if you want to. And of course, that there are going to be many other factors that are taken into consideration in your application. And so with that, I'm just going to take another 5 minutes, and I just want to be able to walk you through some sample questions. I'm sure this is kind of what you're hoping to get out of today's session. So with that, data insights. So as we talked about, there's 4 types of questions in data insights. You've got your multi-source reasoning, you have your table analysis. This is also the only part of the assessment where you have access to a calculator. I just want to draw your attention to here. This is where you will find your simple drop-down on-screen calculator. This is the only time that you should be, during your prep process, that you should be utilizing a calculator, and make sure that you're just using the on-screen one. So in data insights, you have multi-source reasoning, you have table analysis, you also have graphics interpretation, as well as 2-part analysis. I also mentioned at the beginning of today's session that with data insights, you also are now going to be having data sufficiency questions. My biggest piece of advice with data sufficiency is that if you can become comfortable with the 5 answer statements and be comfortable and understand what they're asking, what they mean, it will help you move through the data sufficiency questions that much more quickly. All data sufficiency questions have the exact same 5 answer choices. So just keep that in mind. With quantitative, right, you're going to be, with the quant section, you're going to have problem solving. So a couple of things, there's this big myth that like in order to be successful in quant, you have to be super mathematical, and that's just not the case. If you pass 10th grade math, you're going to do just fine. The problems you're going to encounter are going to be basic algebra, logic skills, and analytical thinking. And what we're looking for in the quant section is your ability to reason, not just your demonstration of mastery. So this is a perfect example of that. If we were in person, I would invite you to raise your hand and answer this question. And even before I had read the question, there would always be a hand up in the past. And the person would answer the question, but it was evident that they hadn't excluded the gratuity. So make sure that you are answering what is being asked of you. So in this case, they're asking you, what is the average price if you exclude the gratuity? So just keep that in mind. As I mentioned, you'll also have reading comprehension within the verbal section. You're going to be provided a passage, then with perspective with potential answers. Make the decision, are you going to read the passage and then go to the answers, or are you going to review the answers and then try to pull them out of the passage? Whichever method or way or strategy that you use in prepping, make sure that you're carrying that through on test day as well. You'll also have critical reasoning. Again, short passage. We're looking for you to make inferences. And then from here, you'd be looking at the 5 possible statements. Again, are you going to look at the statements and read the passage, or read the passage and then go to the statements? And so with that, that is a flyby of sample questions. Of course, you can get more access to GMAT Focus Edition questions through the free starter kit on MBA.com. I greatly appreciate your attention. I see we've got lots of things in the chat. So I'm going to go off from sharing my screen. And Shawn, I'm happy to answer some Q&A.
Sure. I saw a couple of questions focused around the adaptive testing.
Sure.
And if you wouldn't mind talking a little about that, because that's weird if you haven't taken a computer adaptive test before. Sure.
So the computer adaptive testing is what's going to happen is that the computer and the program and whatnot can anticipate your level of performance. And so it will eventually, once it gets to know you, it is going to serve up questions to you of your ability. So an advantage of computer adaptive testing and question adaptive testing is the fact that you could be a test taker that really nervous. And so it takes you a little bit to kind of settle into the exam. And so you might get those first couple of questions incorrect, but you'll then eventually get to, I don't want to say plateau, but you're going to get to the plateau of where you are academically, and the questions are going to be served up to you that are at your level. So my biggest takeaway from this when I learned this several years ago is that you can have a rough start, and that's okay, because you're going to actually end up where you're supposed to be all along. So I hope that makes sense.
Sure. Some questions about percentile ranking. That's just based on the other people who are taking the test, right? There's not really a trick or a game there.
There's not a trick or a game there. Our current percentiles, and so you can you can take a look right now at the percentile tables. They are on MBA.com. We have also made them accessible to all of our school partners. And so what we've done is we've taken the performance of GMAT test takers over the last 5 years and simulated them with the GMAT Focus Edition. And so, of course, the GMAT and the GMAT Focus Edition are two completely different exams. They've been the Focus Edition has been recalibrated. We're using 3 sections for your total score. So I encourage you that if you have taken the GMAT in the past, or you know someone that's taken the GMAT and they said, "Oh, I got X score," and you're like, "Well, I took the GMAT Focus Edition, I got X score." Like, again, as the video showed, it's not apples to apples, and that really you should be looking at them separately, and really be focusing on the percentile rankings. And so as you're looking at programs, you should be asking, you don't want to be asking what's your average GMAT, but you should be asking, what's the competitive percentile rank that I need to be in order to be considered for admission to your program.
And I'll share the specific link to that chart because it really helps to see this. I know that in the past, people have thought, if I can get a 600 on the GMAT, I'm doing, that's average. I'm really shooting for like a 650. A 650 was putting you in the top 25th percentile. BYU is about the top 85. So, you want to be in the 80, in that range. The score you're looking for, just to answer that question, is on the old GMAT was a 670 to 680. On the classic GMAT. Am I using the right terms?
Yeah, it's totally fine. Yeah.
And with the new GMAT Focus Edition, it's a 615. So we have people saying, "Oh, I didn't do as well on this as I meant to," not realizing that a 615 is putting you into that percentile ranking that is a strong showing for what we're looking for at BYU.
Right. Exactly. Perfect.
I'm working on that. I'm getting better at answering those kinds of questions. Let me look through and see if there were explain the percentiles about adaptability. I think we covered that. We are sending a recording out of this to the email that you registered, so we'll share that afterwards. I'm pumped. I love the change about score sending. Good feedback.
That's great.
Sure. Yeah, with the last couple of minutes here, if you guys have any other questions about GMAT, about studying for it, preparation, I'll just repeat what Kailin already shared, which is use the free resources at mba.com. That 6-week planning chart, I didn't have that when I did my 6-week plan. What I did was I took the test. I didn't do well. I did fine. It just wasn't what I needed. That's the hard thing, is I don't want to beat myself up. My wife was like, "You tried." Then I really looked at what I had missed, where I was weak, what I needed to go and study, and focused on that for about a month and a half before I took the test again. Well, we didn't have the insights that Kailin's showing you now, that it would come back and tell you, what kinds of questions you missed, which areas you really need to focus on. I will tell you that our reports show us that about 20% of our students take the GMAT more than once upon applying into the program. So taking the test more than once, I'm not the outlier that I thought I was. A lot of people just take that test or even plan to go through it. Any other tips or advice in that area, Kailin, that you would add or correct?
No, I think you hit all the high level points. I definitely access what you can. When it comes to prepping, there's some great free resources out there. So if you have access to LinkedIn Learning, there's some GMAT prep there. I've been seeing some head shake. Also Khan Academy, KHAN, they have some GMAT materials on there. And there's just a lot. If you were to Google GMAT prep, right, you're going to come across a lot. GMAT prep is an investment. And so if you're considering prep, I encourage you to do your homework, do research, look at reviews, ask if you can talk to current clients or past clients. No one can guarantee you a perfect score. So keep that in mind. Be a little leery if they say they can help you achieve a perfect score. Just take your time when you're looking at prep. I would encourage you to take advantage of the free prep resources that we have. Take one of those practice exams and use it as a benchmark to see where you need to focus your time, and then make an assessment of, do I have the time? Do I have the time to be able to prep on my own? Will I be dedicated? Will I hold myself accountable? Or am I someone that, I need to be showing up to a class either in person or virtually every Tuesday night from 6 to 9? The thing about the
Kailin,
prep.
I'll pause you if I can interrupt
Yeah.
it and just say there are 2 free exams available on MBA.com, right?
There are, yeah.
I would take both of them in test. You didn't mention this, but in test-like conditions.
100%, yeah.
Meaning have your, even if you have like the erasable page, like all of those things, as much as you can emulate what those test conditions are going to be, because that's what weirded me out. The first time I took the test, I just wasn't ready. It was my first computer adaptive test. I didn't really, I hadn't studied and prepared in that condition. So that threw me off and made it difficult, where if as much as you can simulate those test conditions, tell your roommates or your family, whoever's involved, like I need 45 minutes alone, then I'm going to take a 10-minute break. Like really prepare yourself mentally for this, and treat it like a game as much as you can, because it's hard. It's going to struggle and be a tough test anyway. Like make it as much fun as you can for yourself. It just helps your mental attitude as you go through what's an important hurdle and test into getting into, graduate school.
100%. Yeah, that was a great point. Thanks, Shawn. Yeah, and no cell phones and no calculators. Only use the on-screen calculator. So I would do your research, and that's so make sure, take advantage of the free prep that's out there to start, and then make the assessment if you actually need to use a professional prep resource. The practice test, those are in GMAT Focus. They are in the GMAT. You need to download or you need to sign up for the GMAT Focus practice kit, and you will have the 2 free practice exams available to you where you can play around with the select section order, the timing, and whatnot. Kyle, if you miss the 48-hour window when your official scores are available to you, you will have to pay to send those scores. So I encourage you to make sure that you're keeping an eye on your email for when that alert comes in, and when you receive that notification that your scores are available, the clock starts with the 48 hours. And so after that 48-hour period, then you would be responsible for paying for all those scores that you would like to send. You would not have those 5 free score sends. We do not provide a physical calculator. The only calculator that is available to you is the on-screen calculator that's part of the data insight section on the exam. So as I pointed out, it's an on-screen calculator. It's very basic. So you'll have access to that in all of the prep materials. Make sure you're becoming comfortable with that in your prep, so you can then optimize that on test day. You all had some great questions. Thanks so much. Super, super engaging group. Really, really kept me on my toes today. So thank you for that.
I would just end by saying I'll put my links to my calendar again into the chat for anyone that wants to schedule time. Some of you took advantage of that. Whenever you see availability, I'm happy to jump on. Those are usually 15, 20-minute phone calls where we can talk through your application process. I can't tell you if you're admitted or you're standing or any of the stuff that you're going to want to ask but shouldn't ask. I will say another reason that the GMAT is so important to us is it's used as a strong determinant for scholarship, full and half tuition scholarships into the program. I'll remind you, BYU isn't, we are one of the more affordable MBA top tier programs that you'll run across, but getting a scholarship certainly does help most of our graduates finish with low or no debt. And it's always nice if you can bolster that by getting scholarships, so you're not even out upfront money. So doing well, that 80th, 85th percentile on the GMAT is a great way to qualify yourself for the program, and will certainly put you in consideration for scholarships. The GRE is also an acceptable standardized test. There's more information about that on the website. Any of this you're looking for is at mba.byu.edu. I encourage you to go there, get started on your application. You can complete the application without a GMAT test score. You can actually submit and just put into the dropdown that you have not completed the test, you're scheduled for the test, or you haven't taken the test yet. And that allows you to complete that submission and then send those test scores, as Kailin talked about. When you finish that test, they'll be sent to us and we'll add those to your application inside the portal. Great. Thank you everyone for your attendance, for your attention, for your questions. Congratulations on the decisions that have brought you to the point where you're looking at an MBA program. BYU MBA is an amazing place. With 4 months of experience working here, living in Provo, I will tell you it's 40-something degrees. It's beautiful outside. It's a gorgeous place to study. The mountains are amazing. You'll be surrounded by top-tier faculty, top-tier students, top-tier performers like yourself. And we encourage you to submit your application, to do great on the GMAT, and reach out to me if you have any specific questions. If you're on my email list, you already got all this information and links to this, and we'll send follow-up from this event afterwards today. Thanks again to Kailin. Kailin's 2 more hours ahead. It's 3 o'clock where she's at in Virginia, but we appreciate your time, your effort, your attention, and some great interaction today. Thanks, everyone. Best of luck.